All right, let's dive into something truly fascinating today. We're going on an incredible journey way back in time. We're going to be exploring the lost worlds of the Americas, using some amazing material from the Made in History channel. And believe me, this is a story that goes back thousands and thousands of years, long before any European ships even knew these continents existed.
So, let's start with a really big question, one that kind of gets to the heart of it all. What was America actually like before Columbus showed up? You know, the image most of us have in our heads is probably one of just vast, empty wilderness, right? Well, get ready to have that idea completely turned on its head. As you're about to find out, the reality was a continent absolutely buzzing with millions of people, massive cities, and some truly brilliant civilizations.
Okay, so to really get a grip on this incredible world, we have to rewind. I mean, all the way back to the very beginning. Let's talk about America's first dawn, when the very first people set foot on these huge continents.
So get this, we're talking about a story that starts more than 15,000 years ago. It's just mind-boggling. The very first Americans came over from Asia, walking across a land bridge that connected Siberia and Alaska back then. For thousands of years, these early groups, the Paleo-Indians, were hunter-gatherers, and they spread out all across North and South America. Then, much later, during what we call the Archaic period, things started to change. People began to settle down, and that's when you see the very first seeds, literally, of agriculture and the amazing complex societies that would follow.
All right, so now let's zoom in a bit. Let's see how those early settlements really took off in one specific region that became, well, a true cradle of civilization, Mesoamerica. We're talking about the area of modern-day Mexico and Central America. This is where some of the most famous and powerful ancient American cultures were born. You know, the story of Mesoamerican civilization? It really all starts with one group, the Olmec. They popped up around 1500 BCE, and for a good reason, they're often called the mother culture. Why? Because they basically created the cultural blueprint, the foundation that would influence pretty much everyone who came after them. And when we talk about their legacy, it is monumental. I mean that literally. You've probably seen pictures of these incredible giant stone heads they carved out of volcanic rock. Some of these things weigh over 20 tons. It's just wild. But being the mother culture was about way more than just stone heads. They built up these huge trade networks that spread their ideas all over the place. Ideas about religion, art, even how to make calendars. And nearly every single civilization that came later borrowed and built on those ideas. Okay, so after the Olmec, we run into one of the most famous ancient civilizations of all time, the Maya. Now, one key thing to remember about the Maya is that they weren't one big single empire. Nope. They were more like a network of super powerful city-states, and these guys were absolute masters of, well, pretty much everything, from the stars in the sky to the stones on the ground. And this is where you really see their genius shine. The Maya developed the most advanced and complex writing system in the entire ancient Americas. It was this intricate system of glyphs that could stand for whole words or even just syllables. It let them write down everything, their history, their astronomical observations, their myths, in stunning detail. And all that knowledge? It's what allowed them to create unbelievably accurate calendars and build those jaw-dropping pyramids that just burst out of the jungle. But here's a twist. While a lot of the great Maya cities were thriving, another, totally different power was rising right in the heart of Mexico. We're talking about the massive and honestly pretty mysterious city of Teotihuacan. Even its name is epic. It was the Aztecs who named it, and it means the place where the gods were created. How cool is that?
I mean, this place was huge. At its peak, Teotihuacan was one of the biggest cities on the entire planet, with more than 100,000 people living there. And it wasn't just big, it was perfectly planned out, this incredible urban grid dominated by massive structures like the Pyramid of the Sun. Its influence, both in trade and culture, spread all across Mesoamerica.
All right, fast forward a few centuries. After Teotihuacan had fallen, the last great power of Mesoamerica rose up. The Aztecs. These guys built a seriously powerful empire, mostly through military force, and it was all centered on a capital city that was, well, unlike anything else in the world. They built it right on a lake.
What's just so incredible about them is their sheer power and their creativity. The Aztecs were a major military and political force, no doubt about it. But their capital, Tenochtitlan, it was an absolute engineering masterpiece. Imagine a city of canals, massive causeways, and these amazing floating gardens, all built right in the middle of a lake. And it's on the exact spot where Mexico City stands today.
Okay, let's pack our bags and head south. We're going into a totally different world, but one that's every bit as spectacular, the Andes Mountains of South America. Down here, civilization took a completely different turn, leading to these amazing empires of the mountains.
Now this next part is going to blow your mind. Think about ancient Egypt, right? The Great Pyramids at Giza. Well, at exact same time that the Egyptians were building those, a civilization over in modern-day Peru, the Corral Supe, was building its own massive cities. This was the oldest known civilization in all of the Americas, and it was growing up completely independently at the same time as the famous cultures of the Old World.
And the Corral Supe? They were just the beginning. Over the next few centuries, you had a whole series of cultures that built the foundations of power in the Andes. You had the Chavin, who kind of united the region with their religion and art. And then later, you had empires like the Wari and the Tiwanaku, who built the first big states and really set the stage for the main event.
And that main event, that spectacular final result, was the Inca Empire. They called it Tawantinsuyu, which means the Empire of Four Quarters. And it was, without a doubt, the largest empire in the Americas before Columbus, stretching for thousands of miles right along the backbone of the Andes Mountains.
So you might be wondering, how on earth did they manage such a huge empire? Well, this is where their organizational genius just blows you away. First, they built this incredible road network to connect everything. But even more amazing, they used a system of knotted cords called a quipu. Now, this wasn't just for sending simple messages. This was a super sophisticated data storage system. They used different knots, colors, and positions to record everything you can imagine, from census numbers to historical stories. And the whole thing was run by a really efficient, centralized government. But listen, complex societies weren't only in the big empires of Mesoamerica and the Andes, not by a long shot. Let's widen our lens now and look at North America, because it was home to this huge mix of different cultures, and every single one was innovative in its own unique way. So over in the eastern woodlands, you had cultures like the Hopewell. These folks built up enormous trade networks that stretched all the way across the continent. We're talking goods moving from the Rocky Mountains to the Atlantic Ocean. And later on, the Mississippian culture built these huge urban centers. The biggest one, Cahokia, was a city of thousands of people, all built around these gigantic, man-made earthen mounds.
And elsewhere, the diversity was just as incredible. Out in the Southwest, the ancestral Pueblo peoples built these amazing multi-story homes right into the sides of cliffs. Just remarkable engineering. And then, way out in the Caribbean, you had the Taino people, who developed their own unique island culture, and, as history would have it, they were the very first indigenous people that Christopher Columbus would meet.
So what we've just done is take a lightning-fast tour through a history that has been largely forgotten. A world of just unbelievable diversity, innovation, and depth that was here for thousands of years. It's a legacy that was almost completely wiped away. And this is the most important thing to take away from all this. Before 1492, the Americas were not some new world just sitting there waiting to be discovered. No, they were an ancient world. A continent filled with bustling cities, brilliant new ideas, and thousands of unique cultures that were absolutely, in so many ways, on the same level as civilizations in Europe, Africa, or Asia.
And that really leaves us with one last question to chew on, doesn't it? As we keep uncovering more and more of this lost history, what can the untold stories of these incredible ancient civilizations teach us? What can they tell us about human resilience, about our creativity, and about our shared human history across the whole planet? It's definitely